When the cameras turned to Sue Bird that afternoon, it wasn't just another sideline shot, it was a window into something deeper. Her expression, calm yet clouded, told a story that words hadn't yet dared to touch. Fans noticed it instantly, that flicker in her eyes, the faint tension in her jaw. To some, it was about loyalty. To others, it hinted at something more, a quiet fracture behind the curtain of women's basketball royalty. And as Nafisa Collier spoke with confidence and grace, Bird's stillness said everything. It wasn't anger. It wasn't resentment. It was realization. A legend was watching the torch being passed. Perhaps sooner than she expected? The press conference was supposed to be routine. Collier, now the face of the Minnesota Lynx, was addressing reporters about leadership, about guiding a team through transition. But there was a tone in her voice, a steady, composed authority that made the room feel different. She spoke like someone who had been waiting for this moment all her life, and when she did, everyone listened. Bird, sitting quietly in the back, saw something she recognized immediately. Not performance, not ego. Authentic leadership. The kind that couldn't be faked. For decades, Sue Bird had been the gold standard for poise under pressure. She had lived through eras, battles, and breakthroughs that shaped the WNBA itself. Yet now in front of her stood a new voice, echoing the same strength she had once carried. Collier didn't stumble, didn't hesitate. She answered every question with clarity, humility, and a conviction that felt disarmingly natural. It was like watching the rhythm of the league shift in real time, from one heartbeat to another. What struck Bird wasn't the content of Collier's words, but the power behind them. She had seen hundreds of players speak to the media, but very few owned the moment the way Collier did. Her presence didn't demand attention, it earned it. It reminded Bird of her own early days, when she learned that leadership wasn't about being the loudest in the room, but the calmest when everyone else lost focus. Collier had that same energy, steady, grounded, almost unshakable. But with that recognition came an bittersweet pull somewhere deep within. Bird wasn't jealous. She was proud. Proud to see the league evolving, proud to see new faces rising to carry the movement forward. Yet in the same breath, she couldn't help but feel the weight of finality. The WNBA she had helped build was moving into a new era, one that might no longer need her voice the same way it once did. That realization, as empowering as it was painful, made her reaction all the more human. Still, Bird's admiration didn't blind her to the undercurrents swirling beneath the surface. When Collier and others began to speak more boldly about the state of the league, about officiating inconsistencies, about respect, about fairness, Bird saw reflections of battles she had fought her entire career. The same fight for credibility, for recognition, for the right to be heard. What was different now was the way this new generation wielded its voice. They weren't just players anymore. They were advocates, organizers, architects of change. Bird watched Nafisa, and even younger stars like Paige Buchers, speak out not in anger, but in truth. Buchers' offhand comment, "I've had to learn how to defend while fouling again," echoed in Bird's mind long after it was said. It wasn't a complaint. It was a statement of reality. And to Bird, it spoke volumes about what had changed in the game and what hadn't. The physicality, the inconsistency, the double standards, they were all part of a system that still didn't quite know how to handle its own growth. In her quieter reflections, Bird didn't blame the referees. She never had. She knew their job was brutal. Every decision dissected, every mistake magnified. No one entered officiating to become a villain. But she also knew that systemic flaws couldn't be ignored. When players constantly had to adapt to shifting standards of what was allowed and what wasn't, it stripped the game of rhythm. Basketball, at its best, flowed like poetry in motion. And lately, Bird felt that poetry had been interrupted. She'd seen it happen too many times to hand-stopping brilliance. A grab here, a shove there, unnoticed by the whistle. It wasn't just about missed calls. It was about what those moments represented. They broke the artistry, the very soul of the sport. For Bird, that was the real tragedy. The WNBA stars were some of the most talented athletes in the world. Yet the game sometimes prevented them from showing it, as Caitlin Clark's rival brought a wave of new attention to the league. Bird noticed the irony. What she and others had been saying for years was now being seen in real time by millions of new fans. People were finally asking, how is that not a foul? The conversation had escaped the echo chambers of locker rooms and Twitter threads. It was public now. And Bird knew that once the public started asking questions, the league could no longer afford silence. She believed the solution wasn't punishment, but acknowledgement. Just one statement, "We hear you," could change everything. Transparency wasn't weakness. It was respect. And for a league built on the voices of women demanding to be seen and heard, that mattered more than anything. What weighed on Bird's mind most, though, was the future. The WNBA had grown stronger, but it still bled talent referees, coaches, and staff siphoned away to the NBA the moment they hit their stride. It wasn't just officiating that suffered. It was the ecosystem of the entire league. Bird had seen it too many times. The best didn't stay because the system didn't reward them for staying. And how could a league reach its full potential when every investment in excellence was eventually handed off to someone else? Her reflection was clear-eyed and unflinching. If the WNBA wanted to thrive, it had to start treating itself like the powerhouse it had become, not a smaller version of something else, but a league with its own identity, its own standards, its own pride. That meant consistent officiating, fair pay for talent, and above all, a culture that valued stability as much as ambition. Watching Collier, Buchers, and the new wave of players, Bird understood that the fight she had carried for decades was in good hands. It wasn't ending. It was evolving. The new generation wasn't afraid to speak truth to power, and that gave her hope. But that hope came with urgency. Because if the league failed to listen now, it risked losing not just control of the game, but its very soul. As Bird's reaction continued to circulate across social media, fans debated what it meant. Was it the face of pride or disappointment? Admiration or concern? Maybe it was all of them at once. A legend seeing the dawn of a new era and silently wondering whether the future would honor the past she had fought for. So now, the question lingers like a final echo in a quiet gym can. The WNBA rise above the inconsistencies, the overlooked details, and the broken systems that hold it back? Or will history repeat itself, leaving another generation to fight the same battles all over again? What do you think, basketball fans? Has the league learned from its past, or is it still trapped in the same cycle of silence and struggle? Can the new voices of Collier, Clark, and Buchers lead the WNBA into true equality, or will their strength be tested by the very system they're trying to change? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the moments that define the game.